Welcome, everybody, to the X Factor podcast. Yours brutally here, commanding the spaceship. My co-pilot today is the great Jon Rennie, officer on deck, 10 Hut.
How you doing,
And
Coach? Good to see you today.
the pleasure is all yours, sir.
Always.
And we have behind the scenes the what would we call him? The puppet master? Because he sort of pulls all the strings
Wizard
on
of
this
Oz.
thing.
The Wizard of Oz. The man
Wizard of Odd. He is the Wizard of Odd.
That's probably more like it.
And that is the DFE, Parker.
Yeah, I am the wizard.
Oh, you're a wizard, all right.
Yeah.
And at least today you're not dressed like you're coming home from Hogwarts. So you got that going for you. So today on the pod, we are, I'll remind you, we're brought to you today by
What is
a
that
special coffee sponsor, which says no free shout outs. We thought we had a coffee sponsor, but they said they're going to send me product. I never got it.
Soon.
So, yeah, shout out to the Postal Service for probably screwing that one up. But soon we will have a sponsor. So instead, today the podcast is brought to you by John. What's your sweatshirt say?
My sweatshirt says.
I can't see it.
I can't. I have to stand up. It says chin up, chest out, move forward. What does yours say, Coach Bruce?
It says the exact same thing. Well, would you look at that? Would you look at that? And would you look at that?
Got the matching hat, and I see a sign even in your studio.
Yeah. Chinupchestout.com is my apparel brand. Parker, we're going to get you set up with some swag.
Yes, please. I'd love some of that.
It's on the way. It's on the way. Be patient, young Jedi.
Do you have like a chin up, chest out mankini we could send him?
I do. Hang on. Let me get that. So you can introduce the topic today, and I'll get the mankini.
Well, today on today's show, we're going to be talking a little bit about leaders, people that we look up to, people that that have that X factor. So when it comes to leaders, I'm actually I've picked a military leader. Oh, look at this! It is.
I guess you could say people who are the total package. Yeah.
I don't know what to say. We literally
You're often speechless around me.
We literally just saw
my charm.
Mankini live on the air. So if you're not subscribed to YouTube, you're going to miss out on a Mankini.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe you don't want to subscribe. Or,
yeah. How do people find our YouTube, Parker? If they're listening on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and wherever else podcasts are sold for free, how do they find our YouTube?
They'll all be in the links in the description of the podcast, whether you're on Anchor, whether you're on YouTube, whether you find us on Twitter, whether you find us on Facebook, whether you find us on Instagram. All the links will be in the description, whether it be in the bio or down below.
Chin up, chest out.
Good. So in other words, what he's saying, John, is
yes.
I don't remember the exact URL. It's youtube.com/something I forget is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, because it always is that way.
Well, wait. Well,
no, you had your chance. Nope, sorry, stop. Cut him off. He had his chance. So, John, we're talking about leaders that we respect and admire because they have the X factor.
The X factor, absolutely.
What's the X factor again? For people who are new to the pod.
Yeah, the X factor is that something extra that elevates you above the crowd. So it separates you from the pack. It's the kind of characteristic that allows you to fill stadiums like very famous musicians or bands or authors that sell millions of books, people that can fill stadiums to hear them speak. These are the people that have the X factor. These are the people that are changing the world. And those are the people we want to feature on this podcast.
And speaking of, so if you're new to the pod, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
If you're not new to the pod and you are a day one P1, like our friend, Mr. James Elliott.
Hey, James Elliott. Shout out to him.
Shout out to @James_Elliott. That's ELLIOTT on Twitter. He is the original day one P1. Everyone should aspire to be like James and be a P1 listener, which basically means we are priority number one on your playlist numero uno, for our friends who speak the Espanol. You want to be like James, be a day one P1. I think probably what we're going to do is have something special made for our day one P1s and just P1s in general, that we might surprise them with and send them a little something in the mail, John.
That sounds like a plan. I like it.
Yeah, that's a plan. So shout out at James_Elliott. You the man. He's also a leadership coach and trainer
Yes, he is.
in
Absolutely.
the San Francisco Bay area. So
Yes.
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so we'll have to get him something. And so shout out to James for being our first day one P1 listener.
We'll get him something. We'll bill it to the Underhills account.
Perfect.
Yeah. Parker has no clue what that quote was from.
I have no idea. That's why I'm smiling.
Yeah, I'll have a steak sandwich and a steak sandwich. Bill it to the Underhills account. So, yeah. So, John, let's jump right into this. Leader you respect and admire from your previous professional endeavor.
Yeah, so
you weren't a submariner, you were a submariner.
Absolutely. I was a submariner. I was a submarine officer. And the guy, the father, the godfather, the one that everyone who's a submariner knows, who is very famous, who is the X factor in the submarine force, is a guy by the name of Admiral Hyman G. Rickover. Have you ever heard of Admiral Hyman G. Rickover?
No, but I bet he was popular with the ladies.
Yeah, I don't know about that. He was a little bit of a kind of a nerd, so maybe not. So he is known as the father of the Navy nuclear program. So he was.
When did that start? The Navy nuclear program. Is it nuclear or nuclear?
Nuclear.
Nuclear.
Yeah.
What's nuclear mean?
I don't know. We have to ask George Bush, but
yeah.
So have you ever heard of him? I mean, he's kind of an interesting character in history, but
that is not one of the Hymans I've heard of.
No, not one of the Hymans. So this is so it's kind of interesting. You know, we've been talking about X Factor people have changed the world, and what's kind of interesting is we talked about Eddie Van Halen on a previous episode, and he was an immigrant, and he came over very poor. If you remember the story, he came over with nothing but a piano.
And how the hell did they get that thing over the wall?
It makes no sense. But Rickover was the same thing. He was actually born in Poland in 1900, and he came over to the U.S. when he was just 6 years old. They fled Poland. There was a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment, the Russians coming into Poland. So he escaped in 1906. So he's 6 years old when he came to the U.S. And by the time he was 18 years old, he got accepted to the Naval Academy to go become a naval officer. So kind of a, immigrant. I guess he had become a citizen at that point. I have no idea back then what the rules were. But when the Naval Academy came out, and he actually served on a bunch of smaller ships and eventually was on the battleship Nevada. And he was selected to get a master's in electrical engineering from Columbia University. And in 1930, he graduated with this degree. So he was a guy that originally went on some smaller ships. He went on a battleship and eventually got his master's degree. And at that point, he decided to go to serve on submarines. So he actually served on 2 different submarines and received his gold dolphins, which are your submarine qualification. So he was actually a submariner before there were nuclear submarines. So he was on a diesel boat before World War II. So, the guy.
A, I didn't know submarines are called boats because I just assume boats float and subs don't. But B, I didn't know there's such thing as a diesel sub.
Yeah. So diesel electric subs were all the rage before nuclear power. And the only problem with a diesel submarine is that you need air to run the diesel engine.
Mm-hmm.
So you would go on the surface, you would run the diesel, you would power up your batteries, and then you would shut your diesel down, you would dive down, but you're only limited by a certain amount of time. Your batteries can only last.
So they weren't real stealth subs long term, basically, is what you're saying.
No, not long term. They
Yeah.
always have to come to the surface to run the diesel to charge the batteries. That was the downfall. And this is what Rickover learned as a submariner. He learned that there was a problem with diesel electric submarines. They couldn't only stay down for a certain amount of time, which planted the seeds early on with the idea that maybe there's a better way to propulse. Is that a word? Propel. That's probably a better word. It's probably the proper word. You know, I'm an engineer, not an English major.
I have the best words.
I have the best words.
Well, it says here he directed the original development of naval nuclear propulsion. So I guess propulsion would be.
Propulsion. That's why I got propulse out of it, but that's probably not a good word. So
Propulsive is anything like repulsive? Propulsive is that?
Very-
I don't know.
it is. It's
So anyway, he is someone that you hold in high regard because he was a trailblazer, the trailblazer in your field.
yeah. He was a trailblazer.
You get any fun stories about him? Like, I mean, obviously he changed the game with regard to propulsion.
So he was a jerk, for all intents and purposes. Let me read how he was described. He was a workaholic, blunt, confrontational, insulting, and hyperactive.
This guy's my spirit animal.
He was demanding of others without regard of rank or position. He had little tolerance for mediocrity and none for stupidity.
This guy is my spirit animal. My frustration threshold for idiots is like, it's a negative number. It's not even a fraction. It's a negative number.
So you would love Admiral Rickover. So Admiral Rickover decided when he developed the nuclear program and eventually, launched the USS Nautilus, first nuclear submarine, all that, he became the father of the nuclear program. He decided that he would personally interview every officer that would ever serve on any nuclear vessel in the Navy. And so that's what he did. So he personally interviewed every person that would aspire to go into he called it his nuclear program.
So let me ask a question with that, John.
Yes.
If I might interject something.
Sure.
Is that considered one of the highest signs of respect in the Navy? And here's what I mean by that. When I say that, is I know, like, if you're selected to be a Marine Corps recruiter,
yes,
for the United States Marine Corps, it's one of the highest honors a senior officer could garner, because you get to select those that you deem potentially qualified to follow in your footsteps and become future leaders. Is that the same in the Navy? Like with him interviewing and screening submariner candidates for nuclear subs?
In a way it was, because he was in that position for a long time. Like, he actually served as an admiral up until he was 81 years old, right? So he was the godfather, and he controlled that whole pipeline of everybody that went into it. So was it an honor to be selected by him? Well, there was no other way to get into the program for the all those years. He single-handedly micromanaged the Navy nuclear program during those years, and the only way you were going to get
that's a lot of power and authority consolidated in one place.
A lot of power, he had a lot of authority, and nobody wanted to cross him because he had
the keys to the kingdom.
He had the keys to the kingdom. He went after his political rivals. He was a force of nature, basically. But the stories of people that actually interview with him are hilarious, and you can look some of those things up. But
I got a question for the DFE. Can you search? No free shout outs to Google. You're going to do an internet search, if you could, please. How old was he when he died? Because there's a guy that worked in the military until he was 81.
Yes.
So number one, first of all, imagine the size of that guy's freaking pension. You'd never be allowed to serve in the military now until that age, because you'd have this massive pension, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Wondering how long he got to cash in on that and enjoy it after he retired.
So it says here he passed away July 8th, 1986. But it says that he died at 86 years old,
5 years.
Yeah.
and his years of service were 1918 to 1982. It says on the line.
So you work your ass off until you're 81, and you die 5 years into your retirement.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
4 years, actually. 4 years into his
4
retirement.
years. There are two things I'm not good at: math. That's sad
It is sad.
because you didn't really get to enjoy all the fruits of his labor. But at the same time, like you say, workaholic. That kind of described my dad. He worked until he was like close to 80, and then got cancer and died.
Mm.
And I'm convinced retiring is what killed him because he had no hobbies. This guy probably didn't have any hobbies either because all he did was work, and he loved to work. He lived to work. He didn't work to live.
Right. Right.
And it's just kind of, I mean, it's probably what kept him alive and fueled him. But at the same time, it's kind of sad not to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labors for very long.
Well, he was he pretty much dictated what happened in Navy and nuclear terms, if you will. And like I said, he would personally interview each one of these people that would come through, and he would do all these games. He played all these games with them when you came in to interview. Like, it was very famous that he had the chair that you sat in front of him was a wooden chair, right? And
Yep.
he cut the legs shorter on the front part of the chair, so you would be constantly sliding down during the whole interview, and he would keep asking you, are you uncomfortable? Why can't you sit still? And there's one story where he would lock people in a closet in his office. He would tell them to go in the closet, and he would keep interviewing students. And then, by the end of the day, he'd have the person come out and finally interview them. And one story where
It's kind of like being on a nuclear sub.
Yeah. In
Like,
what
you
way?
better not be
In a closet?
claustrophobic. You better be resilient, and you better be mentally tough enough to handle isolation for a long time, sensory deprivation, all that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's crazy like a fox.
Oh yeah. He was testing people. One time he had a candidate he really liked, and he said, "Let's go to lunch." So he took him out to lunch, and they went to a nice steak restaurant in Washington, D.C. And the kid put salt on his steak before he tried it. And he said, "You're out of my Navy, get out of this restaurant." And he kicked him out of the program. He never got in the nuclear power program.
Henry Ford was famous for that. He'd take management candidates to lunch or dinner, and if they salted their food or seasoned it with pepper, anything before tasting it, they were done.
Yeah, there's all these
Love that
stories.
test.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's kind of individual he was, but he changed the world. I mean, he changed nuclear power. The USS Nautilus was the first nuclear power submarine that was launched in the U.S. It circumnavigated the world, went underneath the North Pole. We talked about the North Pole in our Christmas episode.
You're gonna want to go back and watch that.
Yeah, and so the Nautilus actually went underneath the North Pole, and they got to see what happens to a compass when you go underneath the North Pole. It's kind of
what does happen to a compass when you go underneath the North Pole?
It doesn't. It goes in circles. It doesn't know what to do. So, but
like a dog chasing his tail.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Good book called Nautilus 90 North, and it's the story of that first submarine patrol underneath the North Pole. It's kind of a fun story, but. Anyways,
so we wouldn't have
kind of
nuclear power as we know it without that dude.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't. We wouldn't have reactors the size they were put on submarines if it wasn't for him. And even
can we blame 3 Mile Island on him?
No, actually, this was interesting because he was actually a contemporary during those days.
Yeah.
And there's never been a naval nuclear accident in the history of the U.S. Navy. And part of it is the safety that he pushed in this program. In fact, 3 Mile I can't even say it. 3 Mile Island happened. TMI. Too much information. That's why I can't say it. And that happened during the time that he was developing the nuclear program, and yet they still stayed on course. So
it was like what, 79 or 80 around there.
It was, yeah. It was during the Carter's administration, and Carter was actually a nuclear submariner as well, which is kind of interesting. Or was a submarine.
I thought he was a peanut farmer.
He was that as well. So yeah, Anyways, that's my guy, Admiral Rick Over. He's my guy. I never had to interview with him. I came into the program in my first interview with naval reactors must have been in '87, and he was already gone by then. He was actually already dead by then. So,
Damn, you're old. I was a junior in high school.
yeah, I missed him.
Wow.
So, anyways, good.
Who knew you're that ancient?
I'm pretty old. Yeah.
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 So while we're talking about nuclear reactors and nuclear power, 3 Mile Island this is a quick little story about it. It's a great example of a failure of system design. And the reason I say that is those cooling agents at the top of the reactors, when there is a leak, the way their emergency alert system is set up was that this special light bulb would go on to signal that there was a problem. Now, they didn't know the light bulb went on to signal there was a problem when they had that leak and that problem, because the light bulb burned out. So it couldn't go on. I mean, there was electricity firing on the wires to the light bulb, but the bulb couldn't light up. And it's just a very good cautionary tale of a leadership failure when it comes to system design, because if they were smart, they would have set it up so the light bulb was always on, signifying that everything was stable and operating correctly. And when the light went off, you were alerted that there's a problem. Like, oh crap, the light went off. There's a problem. Something, we got to check it out. And then when they run the system check, they could just say, oh, hey, it's just a burned out bulb. We need to replace the bulb. We don't have nuclear waste flowing into the Susquehanna River downstream to all these communities, polluting the farmland. Like, I grew up around there. It was a scary time. No one drank the milk that got shipped in from Harrisburg Dairy, because there are dairy farms downstream from 3 Mile Island, which is right on the Susquehanna River. It was crazy, but it was just a simple design failure.
Yep.
Cautionary tale.
And
so if you're ever on Jeopardy and you get that question, you can credit me.
We'll credit you. And we could credit Rick Over for never having that happen on a naval vessel.
Exactly. That's impressive. He's an impressive dude.
Yeah, it really is. If you ever are bored and you want to research some interesting guy in history, Rick Over is one of those guys.
Yeah. So let's kind of unpack the X factor with him.
Sure.
A little bit. I think the thing that comes to mind for me with everyone has the X factor that's a trailblazer and is doing things people haven't ever done before in their field. There is a certain element where you've just got to impose your will on others. And I mean, he is a very clear example of that in multiple ways. A very strong, domineering personality with a lot of personality quirks, with the right intention, but maybe misunderstood execution. I think that happens in a lot of cases to varying degrees. Like, people might think you're nuts, and the person I'm going to talk about in a few minutes here, people really kind of probably question his methodology. But the bottom line is, like, it's either crazy or it's crazy like a fox. And if it doesn't work, you're just a crackpot and it's crazy. If it works, you're crazy like a fox.
Absolutely.
Rick Over was crazy like a fox with his methodology.
Absolutely.
And what's a lot of people just didn't get it until after the fact.
The one thing that really stood out is that, he really wasn't a submariner per se. Like, he didn't spend his whole life on submarines. Thinking about this, he had this one tour where he was on 2 different submarines, but that planted a seed that eventually grew into what became his life's mission. And don't underestimate.
A seed of success, if you will.
A seed of success, exactly.
Shout out seedsofsuccessbook.com.
Absolutely. Right here, I got a copy of it right here. It's one of my favorites, Seeds of Success.
So the beauty of how wonderful that book is it doesn't sit on a bookshelf. It sits directly on John's desk in his studio.
Absolutely. Within arm's reach.
Yes.
So
what's your favorite thing about Rick Over? You're just like, wow.
Well, like I think you nailed it. He
I usually
he
do.
was a force of nature, and he was a force of will. He believed in the nuclear power program so much that he pushed it, and he pushed it to the point where, you know, it had success. But
Yep.
if it wasn't for him, it wasn't for his dominant personality, it would never have happened. Especially in Washington D.C., trying to get anything done is impossible. So he was a
Yeah.
force of nature, and he changed the whole world of naval architecture based on his force of will. So, real X factor.
I think people are probably going to, some people might bristle when I say this, but I think you're going to look back on the Donald Trump presidency and think similarly, like with Rickover, like getting anything done in DC because all the layers of administrative minutia and political bullshit is damn near impossible. So when, you know, and maybe it isn't even just Trump, when you see an executive order from a president, it's typically born out of frustration. Like, this is the only freaking way I'm going to be able to ram this thing through, which I think is pretty important. So I'm going to do it. Obama did it. Like Clinton, everybody did. But I think it's born of frustration. I'm just going to take action. And you know, I think the world rewards action takers, and the willingness to put yourself out there, which is why I chose the person I chose. Hashtag great segue. So the topic that we chose today was leaders that have the X factor, and John being a retired naval officer in a submarine during the Cold War, chose a submariner, the original nuclear submariner, right?
Yes.
Me being a recovering retired college coach of 12 years, I chose a coach many people, unless unless you're well versed in the coaching community and sports, specifically football, you won't know who I'm talking about. You're going to think, who? But I chose Blake Anderson. And Blake Anderson is probably the most entrepreneurial football coach in America. And he's a game changer. He is formerly the head football coach at Arkansas State University, now just named head football coach at Utah State University. And he's one of my favorite people. He's one of my favorite human beings beyond the coaching profession. And I think there's that 1% that change the game in anything, and the other 99% just do it the same as everyone else. And Blake is a 1%er. You know, he is keenly aware of, and this is where I think he's entrepreneurial, John. He's keenly aware of the fact that sports are mirror business. It really, college sports mirrors business. It's, to get results, it's not what you know and who you know so much as who knows you, and how you get people to know you, how you get your program to become known to the public, to the masses. That's his secret sauce and his forte, because you're either different or you're invisible. And, you know, this is a guy who, his former team, Arkansas State, is located in a tiny little town, Jonesboro, Arkansas. They're in the group of five. They're not in the Power Five. So they're in a smaller conference, Sun Belt Conference. They're not even the flagship university. University of Arkansas is there. You know, University of Arkansas is in the SEC, and Arkansas State's in the Sun Belt. So anytime you're kind of an underdog like that, you've got to do it better, faster, and with less resources in anything, you know? So if you're a small business owner, especially right now, you can relate to that. So how do you beat the big dogs at their own game with a smaller brand, a smaller market, smaller budget? Change the game. You don't play the same game they're playing, you change it. And, you know, like guerrilla marketing is probably what he does. And his ability to get attention. So, you know, what he does is, and I'm confident you're going to see him do the same thing at Utah State, because it flat out freaking worked at Arkansas State, is he would ask himself and his staff every single day. The first thing they would do in a staff meeting is, what can we do that no one else is doing to get attention for our program. You know, whether that attention is media, social media, whatever it might be, live, you know, in person. And they would just brainstorm ideas. One of the things they did was they did these amazing trick plays with a lot of regularity. And what happened was, and you can Google Arkansas State trick plays, Google feigning goat, you know, or look it up on
It's
YouTube.
the one I remember.
Feigning goat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what originally caught my eye was they ran this feigning goat play, and they were trending on social media. It went viral, and they were trending on social media over, you know, like USC and Alabama. It was during a couple of major games by, you know, nationally ranked top 5 teams who should have been, those games should have been trending, but this feigning goat play trended 10 million views on YouTube last I checked. And it's literally just someone falling over, a wide receiver falling over and playing dead at the snap of the ball to kind of get, you know, the defense's attention, look at him like, why did this guy drop over? And then they ran a play to the opposite sideline. They ran another one called Hide the Midget. I mean, it's just brilliant. And, you know, Alabama's going to get on ESPN Sports Center, USC, Oregon, like all these big programs are. Arkansas State has to do something crazy outside the box, different, like feigning goat play, to get on Sports Center, to trend on social media, to get 10 million views. You got a lot of attention for that program multiple times. And I think that's huge because it's earned media, free media, not paying for ads. So how can you do something like that to get free media? It's huge.
Well, and you bring up the point. You know, you're trying to constantly get attention as a smaller college coach. You know, for recruiting and bringing on. I mean, who doesn't want to be part of a fun offense that's going to be doing crazy things that you never know what to expect? Like if I'm a young high school student, I'm looking for where to go. It's like, maybe I'll go there. That looks like it's a lot of fun, right? And you actually attract, and same thing with your brand, right? If you can do things that are kind of fun and crazy, people are going to be more attracted to you because, wow, that looks like a place I want to go. It looks like it's entertaining. It looks like a place that's, you know, different, right?
I would argue that it's irresponsible of you not to do these things because there's so much clutter. Everyone's running Facebook ads. Everyone's doing the same exact thing to the point where it's human spam.
Right.
Like he was the 5th head coach in 5 years. That job has been a great stepping stone very quickly for other coaches. So it's kind of like, you know, a woman who meets her 5th husband. Like you're going to be, you know, the fans, ticket holders are going to be really guarded and suspicious. They're not going to, they're probably thinking, you know, we better not like him too much because we're not going to be able to hold on to him very long. We like the last 4 and they're gone. So he really had to win people over. He was there for, I think, almost 7 years. And, you know, one of the things he did was to win the fans and the students over. You know, one of their home games, in advance, he paid to buy the entire student section ice cream at halftime. Like, how cool is that? The head coach, like, bought them ice cream.
Yeah.
And it's just random acts of kindness like that, not expecting anything in return. He'd do this thing where he'd wear a GoPro on his, strap a GoPro to his head, and he would stand at the busiest intersection in Jonesboro and knock on windows and just say, hey, do you have tickets to this weekend's game, Arkansas State football? And people would be like, no. And he was like, now you do. And however many people were in the car, that's how many tickets he would hand them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, he called it traffic tickets, you know. But he didn't just go there and hand them out. He went there and he handed them out and he filmed it. And he was in Sports Illustrated, ESPN for doing this. And then they, of course, while they're doing these little features, they mention some of the other stuff that he does, like the feigning goat and buying the student section ice cream. And I think that, you know, this is X Factor stuff because no one else is doing it. And people thought he was crazy. You know, like, could you picture Nick Saban doing that? No, not in a million years. You know, like, name any other top 10, top 20, top 50 program where football coaches are just fanatical about being football coaches. They're not going to do that. You know, they'll appear in a TV commercial for a car dealer in town, but they're not going to do crazy stuff like that. And the irony is he's getting better results and he's getting more attention than these traditional methods. If you employ non-traditional methods, you will get better results because you will stand out in whatever it is you do.
You know, the only thing I could think of, Coach, was GoPro camera, strapping one to your head one day and just watching what comes out of that.
I have one. I will.
Let's do that. Let's do that. My daughter might have a GoPro. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah. So like, I'll give you an example of kind of along those lines. There is there's a guy named Aaron Willett in what was formerly my hometown. And I ran into him at Starbucks one day. I went up to pay for my coffee, and the cashier said, "Today's coffee's free." And I thought, like, I had already handed her my card. She handed it back. I just thought I had enough rewards points. And she's like, no, I didn't even punch your card or scan your card. Somebody in the restaurant someone is paying for your coffee today. It's free. I'm like, looking around, like, who bought my coffee? She's like, I'm not supposed to say anything. The guy over there in the corner is buying everybody's coffee for the next 2 hours. So it's kind of like that traffic ticket thing. It's kind of like giving out free ice cream. So I went over to him and I thanked him. I'm like, hey, just curious, can I ask what you're doing? He was like, oh, I'm, the assistant manager over at US Cellular in town. And my boss kicked me out of the office and just told me to go do something nice for the community and gave me a budget of $500.
Nice.
So he said, I thought I'd do this. And, it wasn't like he had the cashier say, hey, that guy over there with US Cellular is buying everyone's coffee. It was anonymous, but if you do good will follow, I think. And the nice thing is, like, when people associate a good feeling with your brand, what happens? They tend to remember it because they felt it. They didn't just see it. They felt it. They experienced it. And, like, I said, what's the benefit for you with this? He said, well, we know we're not the big dog. We know we're not AT&T. We're not Verizon. We're not Sprint. We're US Cellular. But what we do know is we might not be someone's first choice, but if they're frustrated with their current provider, or they get a lot of drop calls or something weird shows up on their bill they didn't expect, they're going to come to us because they'll think, they had a good feeling as a result of us doing this. And, he would do that not just at Starbucks, but other places too. And, it's interesting. They do trainings on, for many, many years, they weren't allowed to sell iPhones. They couldn't get Apple to sell them product. You can only get an iPhone through AT&T or Verizon. And somehow they got their hands on a iPhone and they offered to do free trainings. So what they had were, and primarily older customers probably, but what they had were people who bought their phone at one of their competitors who weren't offering training on their device. So you bought your phone at AT&T or Verizon, but you went to US Cellular to get a free training on how to actually freaking use it, how to download apps and change your screen, take pictures, do video, create a Twitter account and put that icon on your main screen, whatever it was. So like you can get customer support from a competitor. Like that's crazy and it's weird and it's different, but that won them not just business, but a lot of goodwill. It's not something that, the top dog is going to do, but that's how you unseat the top dog.
Absolutely.
Different.
You got to go where the big guys won't go, as a smaller business, we got to, like I've heard said, you've got to go to the thin ice where they won't go. And, big guys aren't going to go out there and buy, they're not going to spend the $500 to buy everybody coffee and make a name for themselves, right? They think that'd be a waste of money, a waste of time. Everybody knows who we are. Why would we do that, right? But the small guy, and you mentioned something too. I think it's important, especially as a small business owner like myself, is be there and be prepared, right? For the time when the big guys screw up, and then you're just there to take up that business and to remind them why you're there, and you take care of them, and then you eventually you get them to switch, because every big supplier, every big guy is going to screw up, and you just want to be there to take care of the customer when they do screw up. And that's a lot of what I do in my business is
It takes them how long to ship product? What do you mean it takes them that long to ship product?
Exactly.
That's your unique selling proposition. Tell everybody about that real quick, John.
Yeah, in my
That
business.
is exactly what we just described.
Yeah, in my business, I mean, most of our suppliers, they take 6 to 8 weeks to supply the product for our industry. We're supplying to electric utilities, and we're doing it. Our company, we're set up to do it in 24 hours, so we ship our product right away. Whereas the other guys are taking 6 to 8 weeks. And right now, we have one of our competitors is at 22 weeks to get a small current transformer, basically. And we just had one of the largest IOUs, investor-owned utilities on the East Coast, just come to us and say, we can't take it anymore. We want to start, we need you to start supplying us. And I've been working with them for 4 years, just being nice to them, showing them our products. And they've sort of ignored me because they kept buying from the big guy. And now they're going to switching over to us after 4 years of crappy service from my competitor. No.
If a salesperson took an order, like just an average size order, and handed it to the fulfillment people in the warehouse, how long would it take them to pick the order, package it, and get it and just get it out, like ready to ship?
Yeah, the whole process probably takes, because we do our product, we keep them on the shelf at a 60% level, and then we do the final 40%, and then so we test it and ship it. So it's probably a couple hours.
Okay. So it takes 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
For your competitor to do it, and you will get that order processed and shipped in under 6 hours.
Correct. Yeah.
What a differentiator.
Yeah, and that's it. And we live in an age of free shout outs, but where they're doing things quickly.
Parker, cut that out.
Yeah.
I'll bleep it.
Yeah, bleep it. Seriously.
Bleep that out. But
it's trained the customer to expect everything immediately.
Exactly.
It really has. Yeah.
Yep.
So just like if people are watching like HGTV, they really think you can flip a house in 48 hours and they expect everything, to be beautiful overnight. Yep.
I always thought you could.
Crazy. It's just, we've changed expectations.
Yeah, we have.
Kind of maybe an unhealthy way, but if you can find a way to compete and make that work for you like you do, it's super healthy for your business.
Absolutely. So this is a great story. So I really like it. We've got two completely different personalities, probably, but both changing the way things are done and making a name for themselves. Would you say Coach is like was Blake a force of nature, or what was his personality like? Was anything like Rickover, or was it completely different?
No, he's a Southern gentleman.
Southern gentleman, okay.
And just really, really personal. The kind of guy kind of move in any crowd. I think you have to be that way if you're a good recruiter, which he is. You got to be able to relate to all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, blue collar families to affluent boosters and everything in between.
So it just goes to show you that it's not necessarily the personality you have that, you get that X factor, right? It's not just Rickover, who was a force in nature, right? It can be a Blake Anderson, who's a good old boy, right? Yep. Southern gentleman, but yet both changed the game. Both made an impact. Both made a name for themselves. And it just goes to show you that you can do the same thing in your business, in your brand, in your personality.
I think we covered a lot of ground here. And
are you going to sing a song? You just took your microphone off the stand. It looked like you might sing like My Way.
I missed my calling as a lounge singer, I think. But I think that's a wrap on the show. But we need to remind people this show is brought to you by chinupchestout.com, which is my motivational apparel brand that supports mental health organizations around the country. You can go to chinupchestout.com, get yourself some gear. And we want to encourage you to become a P1 listener, where we are playlist number one, priority number one for you. And the way you do that, to become a member of this elite crack squad of rule breakers, rebels, and trailblazers.
Yes.
is what do you do? What do you do to become P1, Parker? Earn your keep around here, son.
To become a P1, you need to subscribe down below if you're watching on YouTube. You need to follow us on Instagram at Podcast X Factor. Follow us on Twitter at Podcast X Factor. Facebook should be up and running this week. You need to follow us on that as well. It will be the X Factor podcast as well. And you need to like, comment, and share, please.
Like, comment, share. You heard that. Follow us on socials. And I think the biggest thing, as we kind of talked about, with this episode and others, is word of mouth. We need your help to spread the word about it. Because when like 1% of your tweets get seen, if all you do is tweet a link, that's helpful. It's not as helpful as telling a friend, hey, these guys are really fun and very, very handsome and intelligent.
Right.
You should watch the podcast. You should listen to it, subscribe. And then you, my friend, should tell everyone Like that's P1 material right there. Thank you
material,
very much.
and you never know, we might just send you something.
Exactly. That's a wrap, folks.
That's a wrap.
Remember, like, share, subscribe, comment, and tell everyone you know.
And thank you for listening to the X Factor podcast.
You're welcome.